Orange County Sheriff's Office.
A whale has eaten one of the trainers.
The speedboat herded them in, and they could just pick out the young ones.
Connect people with nature.
An experience you can't get from opening up a book.
If you were in a bathtub for 25 years, don't you think you'd get a little psychotic?
A life-changing impact on a young person's life.
He blamed her.
There's no record of an orca doing any harm in the wild.
SeaWorld is an American multi-million-dollar marine park chain which features orca, sea lion, and dolphin shows, marine animal exhibits, and thrill rides. Since its opening in 1964, SeaWorld has had a leading role in the industry, and today the park is a global leader in animal husbandry, training, and welfare.
My mission is to inspire people to care about killer whales in the wild all over the world.
The work we're doing here at SeaWorld has been and is essential to understanding and protecting the killer whales in the wild.
But theme parks and tourist attractions are never mere entertainment. Through the use of a heavy rhetoric, insisting on their efforts in preserving species and their commitment in inspiring people to protect these animals, SeaWorld attempts to cover up the money-making machine beyond the park. From a critical media perspective, the company turns its animals into commodities. Nature is packaged as an entertainment spectacle, as a brand to be consumed, thus equating consumption with conservation. Just as Disneyland relies on Mickey Mouse, for decades SeaWorld relied heavily on Shamu, its trademarked killer whale. Nature is invisibly standardized at SeaWorld in order to become an attraction we can look at and a machine for mass consumption. Elevating its role to an educational experience, SeaWorld's ideology is that their animals benefit from being in the care of man. However, the impossibility to move and swim in depth is just one of the several reasons that lead to illnesses such as dental injuries from chomping on steel gates and the collapse of the dorsal fin, something that happens to every orca in captivity and almost never happens in the wild.
There would be times during certain seasons that Tilikum would be covered head to toe with rakes. Rakes are teeth on teeth and raking the skin, and from head to toe you could see blood and you could see scratches, and he would just be raked up.
SeaWorld's marine mammal collection and treatment of killer whales in captivity have been the subject of public debate over the years, after the release of the documentary Blackfish in 2013. Blackfish was filmed right after the tragic death of John Brown's show, one of SeaWorld's best trainers, who was killed by an orca named Tilikum in 2010. Blackfish's argument is that Tilikum was driven mad by captivity as a result of the stress and abuse that comes from living in confined spaces. To prove itself right, Blackfish advances its argument in a highly artificial, intensely cinematic way, becoming an emotionally manipulative propaganda rather than a documentary.
Orange County Fire Rescue.
The opening sequence is false and misleading. Edited pieces of innocuous training shot by SeaWorld underwater cameras under soundtrack of actual 911 calls regarding John Brown's show mislead the audience into believing it is viewing footage of the fatal incident.
A whale ate one of the trainers?
That's correct.
Blackfish employs false and emotionally manipulative sequences concerning the collection and separation of killer whales. The film depicts a killer whale collection in Washington state that occurred 4 years ago, falsely suggesting that SeaWorld continues to capture whales in the wild. Well, this has not happened in over 35 years. The bond between mother and child is one of the few values that holds constant across all cultures, and Blackfish exploits it to make the audience identify with the whales and feel empathy, a rhetorical strategy to appeal and connect the audience in an emotional way. SeaWorld is shown separating a mother from its calf that is only days old and moved to other aquatic parks, while a trainer testifies about the long-range vocals the orcas emitted while looking for their babies.
Kasaka continued to make vocals that had never been heard before. They brought in the senior research scientists to analyze the vocals. They were long-range vocals.
However, this trainer was not even working at SeaWorld at the time of the move, and SeaWorld never called in a scientist to analyze the vocals. Furthermore, the documentary shows footage of a killer whale opening and closing its mouth, which leaves the impression that the whale is vocalizing and calling for their offspring. But whales do not vocalize through their mouth. Rather, they vocalize through their blowholes. Also, those shown as newborn were actually 4 and 12 years old mature orcas, not calves, who were disruptive to their mothers and other whales. Blackfish promotes a Disneyfied view of nature, romanticizing wildlife and sentimentalizing killer whales as beautiful creatures of the open sea, deliberately concealing the violence and hardships these animals experience in the wild. Following the long tradition of wildlife documentaries, Blackfish anthropomorphizes killer whales, attributing human feelings to animals based on insufficient information and wishful thinking.
If you were in a bathtub for 25 years, don't you think you'd get a little irritated, aggravated, maybe a little psychotic?
The attribution of a human mental condition like psychosis onto orcas demonstrates how the anthropomorphic rhetoric of intelligence and sociability can be effective in symbolically rendering orcas as humans. The emphasis on violent thrills is endemic to wildlife documentaries because such images are perceived to hold the audience's attention. The Death of Dawn Brown show is therefore the perfect narrative to satisfy humans' fascination with violence. Purely for shock value, the film includes a recording suggesting that Telecom swallowed Dawn Brown show's arm.
Once they were able to pull her away, how did he let go of the...
He didn't.
He never let go of the
arm?
The arm.
He swallowed it.
He swallowed it?
But this is false. The trainer's whole body was recovered. Again, only for shock purpose, the documentary shows a video of a trainer with bloody face, implying that he was injured by a whale, while he just slipped on the floor. Nature documentaries compensate for the lack of physical touch through the construction of a mediated false intimacy between viewer and subject. The director employs several close-ups depicting the trainers moved into tears in order to generate empathy and deter the audience from holding them accountable.
You know, you love them and you think, I'm the one that touches them, feeds them, keeps them alive, gives them the care that they need. They're not your whales. They own them.
I was angry watching Blackfish. An emotion of anger. They did a really good job of doctoring the footage to sell their agenda. You're lying about how we care about these animals. You're lying about the benefits of having these animals in a zoo and aquarium.
I just do not recognize the world that they portray in the movie. I don't see that. The interview, for my part, there were 3 hours of interview footage, and almost everything with any particular weight to it that I said was not included in the film. Nobody cares about those animals more than the people that are boots on the ground there with them. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
We always have to be critical while looking at a media text. Blackfish and SeaWorld tried to blame one another by using different rhetorical strategies because every story needs a villain and a savior. For decades, SeaWorld hid the health issues and violence their animals experienced in captivity, and Blackfish succeeded in convincing the audience by a skilled use of rhetoric, fabrication of facts, and image manipulation, creating a great film but an extremely biased, one-sided documentary. We always have to dive beneath the surface.